All right. Well, I'm going to start with some introductions, and I think we have a slide deck that we'll be running through. But the first slide is introductions, and I'll give a little bit of background and high-level information on parking management, and then I'm going to turn it over to Julie Dixon with the Dixon team, who's been our consultant on the project. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for joining. This is an important topic, and it impacts and touches everybody, right? Whether you're a resident, a business owner, a visitor to the community, it touches everyone. And so, we wanted to have these stakeholder meetings to be able to get feedback and to hear from you what things are working, what things aren't working, if there's things that we need to think about tweaking. We wanted to be able to create these opportunities to get that feedback. And so this is the first of 4 of these that we're planning for 2025. We've got a couple of different check-in points throughout the season, throughout the year, just to be able to touch in at a few different points in time. So first of all, I'll start with the introductions. I'm Kevin Bell. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works for Placer County. From the Placer County team, we have Jared Deck, who's actually the new Deputy Director in the TED office. He'll be starting up there fairly soon. And he actually is replacing Rebecca Tabor, who I don't know if you all had interactions with Rebecca, but Jared is the replacement for Rebecca Tabor. I've been filling in and doing what I can in the meantime to try to keep things moving, doing my best to try to keep it going. We also have Seth Warren, who's the engineering manager in the office, and Mandy Velasquez, who is our admin support for the TED office. And then from the Dixon team, we have Julie Dixon and Jennifer Liu on the line. Julie's going to be doing the bulk of the presentation tonight. And Dixon is, they're a great resource for us. They have a vast amount of experience in parking management, and really a great team player for us, helping us kind of navigate as, in Placer County, some of this or a lot of this is new to us. And so being able to rely on the expertise of a firm that has done it in other places and knows, things that do work and things that don't work generally. Obviously, for our community, there may be different things that are unique to our community. But having their expertise is a great asset. And so as we are ramping it up, we've lost a couple of staff. We lost Rebecca Tabor. She retired, so it's not a loss, right? She retired, which is a great thing. And as I mentioned, I've been trying to pick up some of the pieces. Mandy and Seth have been helping me, and then we also had Zario, who is a great resource for us. And I'm sure some of you had some interactions with Zario, but he was great, a great help. He actually ended up taking a different job somewhere else, a great opportunity for him, but then we were left a little short. And so just wanted to update this group that we have been in the process of trying to hire. We have a permanent parking enforcement officer to replace Zario starting on Tuesday of next week. As I mentioned, Jared Deck, who is on the line here, is going to be replacing Rebecca Tabor. And then we also have 2 seasonal parking enforcement officers that are planning to start June 2nd, or at least one is confirmed for June 2nd, hoping to get the other one confirmed for June 2nd as well. So with that, and then the addition of a staff services analyst position, which is a new position for our office that can really help manage the day-to-day and take some of the burden off of, somebody, myself or Jared, when we have a lot of other responsibilities and trying to manage that program. We can have somebody who's in the office who can do a lot of the program management, the day-to-day program management, so that we can be more responsive and implement this parking management program in a better or more complete manner. I did want to mention a couple of things. The video with this meeting is being videoed, and it will be on both the Placer County website and the Engage Placer. That's our intent and our hope. There may be some technical things that we need to work through, but that's the intent. And it will be at least on one of those two, if not both. But our hope is to put it on both. And we do really want to encourage people to participate, both tonight, but outside of tonight, if there are things that you have concerns about or comments or questions, feel free to reach out to us, or feel free to really work through that Engage Placer portal that we'll be able to communicate and respond to questions and comments. And we'll be posting a lot of information on that site as well. Let's see. So before I turn it over to Julie, I really wanted to just highlight briefly, very briefly, and I'll not do it justice, but really, why are we implementing parking management in this basin, in this community? And it's not about writing parking tickets, and it's not about generating revenue. It's not about just managing parking for the sake of managing parking. The intent of parking is really one piece of a larger the regional the RTTP, which is the Resort Triangle Transportation Plan. So it took me a second to get there, but the intent is really to make these communities vibrant. And that's because with the amount of traffic and visitors that are visiting this fantastic place that we call Tahoe, right? So there's the residents are impacted, the businesses are impacted, the visitors are impacted, and so we really want to set this up so that it is something that works for the residents, something that works for the businesses, and allows turnover and parking in front of the businesses so that there's more ability for patronage of those businesses. And then also for the visitors. And really, a big piece of this is trying to encourage different modes of transportation. And when people come to the basin, maybe they stay somewhere and they park their vehicle, and then they use bikes or trails or other transit options to get around within the basin, rather than getting in their car. It's looking at other opportunities to get people into the basin that doesn't include bringing their car. And so it's a bigger program than just parking management. But we're here tonight to talk about parking management, but I just wanted to hit briefly on kind of the overall goal and the vision, and why we're doing this from the beginning. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie and let her take it away. The Dixon team is going to be helping us facilitate these meetings, both tonight and in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was actually a really great introduction, especially when we talk about the overall perspective of parking being one element of it. And interestingly enough, when we were at the Board of Supervisors earlier this year, one of the comments was, can we do this faster? And the reality is something that I see a lot of familiar names and a lot of familiar faces. I think you all can appreciate we didn't get to where we are overnight. We've said this all along, and we won't resolve it overnight, but it's really about this gradual incremental change. We know how much parking impacts your neighborhoods and your community and your businesses. So we really appreciate your willingness to participate here tonight, so that we can share this update with all of you. And then again, that engagement will continue from here. So what we'd like to do tonight is just give a little bit of an update on our progress related to Kings Beach. We'll talk about the outcomes from last year's pilot program. And then we'll talk about the launch, which is right now scheduled for June 2nd. And then also some of the plans for the future. And then turn the mic over to you all, and definitely hear any of your questions or feedback. Please feel free to take advantage of the chat as well. My colleague Jennifer, who's here with us, will also be monitoring the chat. And for those of you who haven't met us before, again, my name is Julie Dixon, Dixon Resources Unlimited. We've actually worked in and around the basin now for almost the last 8 years. And so we really appreciate this opportunity to really help connect the dots, so that we can really talk about that holistic solution when it comes to just transportation management as a whole. And this is something that we're really excited about, the momentum that we are gaining, especially as we go into this particular summer season. So when we talk about the progress, for those of you who are familiar, the Winter Parking Enforcement Program in Olympic Valley was very successful this year. Many of you are familiar with the ski resorts have changed the way that they are also managing their parking resources. And now as we head into this year's paid parking demonstration, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but I really want to reinforce something that Kevin said is that this really is about compliance. We're trying to ensure that our businesses and our commercial area have the turnover necessary to support their businesses so that we don't have our recreators and our recreational users parking for the long term in front of our businesses to go and utilize the lake and other recreational opportunities. And it's why last year we spent so much time on the warning campaign. And so this year, we also want to continue the conversation about the potential of shared parking agreements. That's being able to utilize and leverage private parking locations so that we can again encourage the utilization of those parking assets. And then again, the expansion of the paid parking program. We'll talk about that here today. And then also the preparation and readiness for our residential parking permit program so that as we see the potential of influx into our neighborhoods is what it would take to be able to roll out a residential parking permit program. The continued data collection, because for those of you who've been involved in this since the beginning, we really do want to leverage data to help influence and inform the recommendations. And we're also excited about the launch of wayfinding improvements for this year to help direct people to where the parking opportunities are. So leveraging that breadcrumbing and signage. And then I'll get into the granularity of the program this year as we talk about the paid parking locations and the expansion to the Brook Lot. But really, again, that focus on compliance and education, we really are trying to encourage everyone to follow the rules. So again, everybody has access to the amenities that they are seeking. So just a bit of a recap from last year. It really was about information because the reality was this was the first time in a very long time that we had consistent resources out there helping to mitigate and manage the curb. Some of you might recall the parking find menu, which was developed by staff to just help to educate the community and our visitors as to where they can park, where they should park, and also the fines associated with the program. One of the things that is really unique to the Placer program and something that we've actually now seen replicated in other communities is the fact that we have a tiered or an escalating penalty schedule so that that's something to again ensure for those repeat offenders that they really do learn the message through that penalty schedule. But again, it really was about compliance and optimizing how to manage the program within the county operations. Many of you have been on this journey with us since the beginning and just even navigating the parking enforcement, the adjudication processes, the administration. That's why I'm actually really grateful that we're going to have somebody in the office this year as well, because you can appreciate the amount of phone calls and emails that were received associated with this program. So again, this is really to helpfully balance the scales as we talk about the mitigation and management of the program. Here on the bottom right of the screen is an example of the data collection for the project. These are all of the areas that have colored coding on the curbs and on the parking lots are all of the locations that we basically collected data. And for those of you who have followed this program, you'll recognize that in the parking industry, when you're at 85% occupancy or greater, it's when you need to start making parking management decisions. And so you can see from just that sampling there that we obviously have a lot of cars, but you all obviously know that. Something else that we did last summer is that we were able to launch the testing of the license plate recognition technology, also known as LPR cameras. And that was important too because we were able to gather data from before the launch of the paid parking pilot in the Christmas tree lot, as well as manage data collection after the launch of that program. And with the launch of paid parking only in the Christmas tree lot, we were not only able to gather feedback from the community and our visitors and those that park there, but we were able to also generate about $9,700 in revenue to cover the direct costs and staffing associated with that pilot. It's important to recognize for that program, we did launch it on August 6th, and it basically ran through the end of September. And in that upper right-hand corner, many of you have probably seen the pay station, which is also consistent with the technology that is used in and around the basin and some other program locations as well. So what did we figure out from last year's project launch? That the compliance by education was effective. The volume of warning notices that were issued was significant, and it's something, again, the phones rang a lot, and so it really demonstrated that people were paying attention and were starting to understand that the rules were changing compared to maybe how they'd been managed in the past. We were approved to be very effective and efficient in the field with our LPR cameras, covering more ground, being able to really capture those time limits, especially when we can manage that from an enforcement perspective. And that there was interest, and this was something that came as a result of the Christmas tree lot, was in the Christmas tree lot, there was a request to be able to have shorter term paid parking opportunities. There's a couple of venues close by, including the ice cream shop, that people really wanted the convenience of being able to just pay for a quick turn in the parking lot for that type of a visit. And we had great feedback on the pay stations saying that they were easy to use. There was an interest in making sure that there was a Spanish translation option on the screens. And there was an interest in more employee parking exemptions and identifying where those locations for long-term parking are for our employees of our businesses, and that mobile payment options would shorten the pay station lines. Right now, 89% of the transactions that happen at the pay station were by credit card, and I am excited to report that we are intending to deploy the mobile payment solution this year, and that will definitely help mitigate some of the implications about waiting in lines, but also many conveniences. So what we can look forward to this year based on the progress that we've made over this winter season. We were able to have the community engagement town hall meetings. We were able to communicate with the Economic Vitality Committee. We also procured and installed the LPR camera equipment in January, and we made major progress with Caltrans regarding the wayfinding signage. As many of you know, we are on a state arterial, so it's not something the county can just go out willy-nilly and put up signs. So it is obviously a cooperative understanding and arrangement there. So getting that buy-in and participation was a big achievement. And we were able to introduce and adopt the ordinances that allow for the paid parking program as well as permit parking, especially readying ourselves for the potential need of residential parking. And some of you may ask, well, why do you say potential residential permit parking? It's very important that we have the codes established in the ordinances, but that request really needs to be driven by the community themselves, so that when and if their quality of life is impacted by parking, you need to have the community ask for that program. And there's a whole list of instructions associated with the petitioning process that comes along with that. As Kevin mentioned, setting up stakeholder meeting frameworks so that we're looking to have reoccurring meetings throughout the season. And right now we are just finalizing the installation of the pay station in the Brook lot, which we'll talk about here in a moment. And right now we are scheduled to launch the program, or I'll say relaunch the program on June 2nd. And our goal this year is to not only continue data collection and education, but we do anticipate that there will likely be an increase in enforcement this year. Again, this is not about writing parking tickets, but we gave a lot of kind of get out of jail free cards last year. And this year, the intention is that while we will focus on customer service and education, we do anticipate that this year there will likely be a slightly higher number of parking citations issued. And so as we talk about the relaunch for this summer, you heard Kevin describe, we've been working on getting personnel hired, our parking ambassadors, and then turning on that paid parking program, as well as resuming our data collection. This is really ideal too, because we're going to be able to have comparisons to last year for the data that was collected. So the more data that we have, the more informed we can be to influence recommendations in the future. And then we're looking forward to the consistent enforcement and compliance, especially on street in our time zones in front of our businesses and in our paid parking lots and along Minnow Ave. And then the community engagement, as I mentioned, will continue throughout this summer. And be sure to check the websites, not only the county website, but also the Engage website, because you'll also see those announcements coming out there and in all of the opportunities that we have for outreach. So as I mentioned, we actually not only are intending to resume the paid parking solution in Christmas Tree Lot, but we are also looking to launch in Brook Lot as well. And both of those program locations are launching on June 2nd. The machines will include a Spanish translation option. And what you basically see here on the left side of the screen is what we're intending to launch with, is that if you arrive between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., there will be a flat rate option of $10 for the day. But we are also introducing a short-term hourly parking option, which is basically $2 an hour for up to 2 hours. And then we've also introduced an evening flat rate program rate, which means if you arrive between 5 and 10 p.m., you can basically pay $2 flat and stay in the location until 10 p.m. during the operating hours. And we are also introducing a holiday flat rate for our holidays throughout the summer season, and that will be a flat rate of $20, and that will allow you to park until 10 p.m. What else is new? So as you see here on the bottom right side, these are the examples of the wayfinding signage that I had mentioned in working with Caltrans, that you'll see the installation of these locations along with the paid parking signage for the parking lots. We are looking forward to, on the compliance side, full-time use of the LPR cameras this season for enforcement and data collection. I mentioned the hiring of additional staff, therefore having our consistent enforcement and compliance along the on-street locations in our paid lots and along Minnow Lot. And again, while we are here about customer service and education and warning notices, we do anticipate this year that it'll probably be a little bit more balanced in warnings and writing notices, and as well as writing citations. And our hope is that our parking ambassadors will continue to be highly visible, and will also spend time handing out informational flyers and really connecting with the community and our residents and our business owners to make sure that everybody stays aware and informed, because we don't want there to be any surprises when we talk about this program. A couple of other important updates. As you see here on this map, we have some improvements for Brook Avenue and some that are specific for the summer. We're adding a 15-minute zone on the north side of Brook Ave, and you can see it where this yellow highlighted area is. And then we're also implementing a 2-hour time limit on both the south side, and for the summertime, the 2-hour time limit will also be on the north side. And it's important to recognize that for the north side of the parking, it's only going to be available basically May 1st through October 31st. Obviously important for when we start to deal with snow and winter elements. But we're excited about these changes and being able to provide a few more short-term parking opportunities, especially for folks to patronize our restaurants and businesses. And this will be something too that we'll monitor closely with our data collection project. And so we talked about future considerations. Again, shared parking agreement pilots are something that we are very interested in. We are seeking interested businesses. So if this is something that you are keen on, please don't hesitate to drop your information in the chat, and we will be happy to follow up with you and have that discussion. One of the things that we've also talked about was identifying a loading zone for beach parking where people can basically pull over, unload their gear, unload their family, and then go and find a longer term parking location. We want to continue the implementation of the wayfinding signage with consideration of aesthetics. Obviously, we don't want to have sign blight, so we want to be as coordinated as possible. And we also want to make sure, again, that we're ready for any interest in a residential permit parking program. And we are also hoping to complete the recruitment of a parking program manager, along with continued hiring of parking ambassadors, and also continuing the exploration of employee parking permits so that we can ensure that everyone can find that long-term parking location. And when we do talk about paid parking, as I mentioned, we're looking forward to implementing a mobile payment option that is also supported by pay by text, and the ability to establish additional on and off street locations are also potential. And also, I know that there are several community members that are very interested in demand-based pricing, which could include dynamic seasonal rate changes depending upon occupancy, and that is something that we're looking forward to exploring as time goes on. And before I take this particular screen off, I wanted to be sure that everybody has the QR codes that are in the upper right-hand corner. You can submit feedback via Engage Placer, and we will also ensure that we have updates posted on the county website. This is our project email address, which you are welcome to communicate with. And obviously, county staff are supporting the program as well. And everyone is very engaged in this process. And we're very happy to have so many of you here today. And with that, I will go ahead and end the slideshow and come back to the screen share and see if anybody, well, first I'll take a note to Jennifer. Jennifer, you've been monitoring the chat, which I could not see. Is there anything to share that was in the chat that we should bring to the group's attention?
Yeah, we had one participant request multi-language translation at parking pay stations beyond Spanish and English. Jennifer, John, if you're still on the call, we would love to hear if you have other ideas of what languages you'd be interested in requesting.
Or if you'd like to put it in the chat, we'd also grab it there as well too. So
I also
And
want to
then
acknowledge that folks are not able to unmute themselves. So if you would like to speak, you can either click the raise hand button down in the menu bar, if you're on your phone, or if you're on the computer, it's in the more section and then raise hand, or you can just type in the chat and then we can unmute you. You can speak in the call.
And I just wanted to mention, I had it in my notes, but I forgot to say it at the beginning. You know, we recognize that the timelines for when we started getting outreach out about this meeting were pretty short. As I mentioned, we were a little bit short staffed and we were trying to confirm some things before we got the date settled on. But we did want to have it before the June 2nd implementation. And so in the future, we will plan to have outreach further in advance to try to give people more opportunity to plan around the meetings. So anyway, apologize for the short notice on this one. But we intend to provide additional time in the future.
thanks, Kevin. And yet, Jennifer, if it's easier for you to add it in the chat, if you have a suggestion of what other languages would be advantageous, that would be really helpful. And also, if you're unable, and Jennifer, was there anything else in the chat before I remind people of how to raise their hand?
Just one comment was someone asked where they could find the newly adopted paid parking and permanent parking ordinances. We've placed a link in the chat that links you to the staff report and the amendments associated with the ordinance. And we'll also make sure that that is uploaded in the link that is to both the Engage Plaster and to the county website afterwards. So please take a look there.
Thank you, Jennifer. And as Jennifer mentioned, we'd love to hear from any of you, any questions or comments. And on the bottom of your screen where the react button is, you can raise your hand there. Or if your camera is on and you actually want to raise your hand that way, and Shauna, I see you. Bear with me 1 minute here to get us situated, to get you unmuted. Bear with me one moment. Too many windows are open. Hold on 1 second. There we are. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself, Shauna. There you go.
Hi, I just had a question about the paid parking lots. Are there specific spots that are just for short term, or is it the option of all long term? Because I like to go get the ice cream, but I don't want to have to battle the people all day.
Sure. No, you can actually, so what'll happen is that actually you can park in any of the spaces with the exception of the ADA space, if or spaces unless you have an ADA placard, of course. but you can actually park in any of those spaces because everything is plate based. So you can actually initiate your short-term parking session in any of the spaces, so that that would make it more convenient and conducive. So that that way, if you just want to pop in, you can grab any one of the spaces and initiate that short-term session.
Okay, and I am just wondering, since if there's going to be more signage, if more people who are there for the whole day are suddenly going to be there all day, and then I don't have a place to park. I'm wondering how that's mitigated.
It's a really great comment, and I'll tell you what, let's see how we roll. And I think that it's something that if we notice that there aren't short-term spaces, I think that that's something that could be readily available. My suggestion is that we start with it kind of being open and fluid to see the convenience factor of you being able to just pop in and pop out. But if you find that it's something that's really impacting your ability to just kind of pop in and grab your ice cream and pop out, please don't hesitate to drop a note to the team. And it's something that we'll monitor really closely as well. So the nice thing about the technology is we'll have immediate access to the data. And so if we're finding that there's not always at least, a couple of parking spaces open, that'll be something that we could definitely address more readily as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great suggestion. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Did I see you, John? Was that a, no? Okay, just a piece. Okay, gotcha. Anyone else want to raise their hand or have any other feedback or comments? Sorry, it's been a long day. And Jennifer, I wasn't monitoring, so I was trying to be sure that I could unmute somebody. Was there another chat comment?
Yeah, Rick had asked a question regarding the additional enforcement mentioned for some of the non-paid lots. Are there going to be policies or regulations added or some additional policies to enforce?
It's a great question. I think one of the ones that was the most commonly requested from last year is ensuring that we don't have long-term storage of vehicles. And so I think that what it really comes down to is just the basics of enforcement of making sure that we don't have the long-term storage of maybe some dilapidated vehicles. So it really just does come down to enforcing the policies as posted and the policies that are already on the books. It's one of the reasons why what I mentioned at the beginning, I think many of you can appreciate. We've never really had the consistent enforcement resources. So our hope is that we really can pick up from what we've learned over this last year plus and be able to really have that continuity. But the real intention is just to make sure that we have readily available vehicle parking for customers and visitors alike and residents who just want to pop into town to maybe grab a bite or pick up something at the shop.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit to that with the staff that we're adding right now. Our intent is to have parking enforcement 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So that's the intent, so that we have people out there that can be implementing the enforcement that maybe hasn't been implemented as thoroughly in the past.
Yep. Thanks, Kevin. And I have to acknowledge on the language request, Jennifer, John, that is the first time in my entire career anyone has asked for Russian. So thank you for clarifying on that one. And we will check with the vendor to see if that is one of the many options. I'm sure that it is, but we'll do some vetting on that for sure. And then we see a question from Shauna. Are there any updates on the Moon Dunes Agatam Avenue area? Kevin, did you want to speak to that one?
I know it is an area that we're looking at, but I don't have details on that or anything planned at this point in time. That's part of what we're here for, is to try to get some feedback and understand what's important to the community, what the issues are, and then we can start looking into it, start gathering data and seeing what the issues might be and trying to figure out a plan.
Great.
I think we may have had another question from Patricia on there.
See that, and to clarify, will there be enforcement on lots where there's currently not paid parking? So the intention, Patricia, there is to again ensure that for marked ADA spaces, that cars that are eligible to park there, people aren't parking, I'll just say the word wonky, where maybe people are overlapping on spaces. And then also for long-term vehicle storage in those locations. That was a big concern that we had last year regarding that as well. So the intention is to, again, just ensure that we have available parking spaces in those locations and to really just enforce county codes as they stand.
I wanted to
Yeah,
briefly add on as well to Julie's point, because the county will be collecting data throughout the entire Kings Beach study area on a regular basis. That means there will be the presence of enforcement and staff throughout every parking location in the town.
Yep. Sorry, Kevin, were you gonna add something else?
yeah, no, I was going to add that we are looking at some of the existing ordinances, like the no trespassing ordinances, the no loitering ordinances, to see if there's some things that we can do there. Unfortunately, I found out that our no loitering ordinance in the county only applies to those under 18 years old. And so, I think that we're a little bit limited in that, but we are looking at other potential changes down the road. Something that I've been talking with staff about is, implementing something or modifying some of our ordinance languages, which is not a short, quick thing that we can do, but modifying some of the language regarding public parking to only allow the immediate parking and retrieval of parked vehicles. So to basically not allow people to just hang out in the parking lots. So those are things that we're looking at and trying to figure out how we can set up the language in our ordinances to allow us to monitor and enforce that a little bit better. But that's not going to be a real quick thing, because I think it will require some ordinance revisions.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And Adam, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question. If you could paint a little more color around the residential permit program. You
Sure.
made a comment that it needs to be asked for, and it feels to
Yep.
me like I've heard in other public meetings that it has been asked for. So just curious what that might look like or what that might entail, especially if you look at the grid in your data from last year. There's definitely some impacts in those probably first 3 levels of streets or 3 streets in. So
Yep.
just curious about what that might look like.
Absolutely. So if there's community members who are interested in a residential parking permit program, what's important is that the community gets together and ensures that they're all on the same page. And the traditional process for that is basically introducing a petition so that the residents can basically ask for the permit program. That's what's really the key, is because when you start to talk about a residential parking permit program, it does put certain restrictions not only on others parking in the area, but it does have somewhat of a limitation on the people who also live in those neighborhoods. So that's what I mean by that ask, is now that we have the codes approved, now we're at the place to formalize those requests. So if there are any neighbors that are interested in this, they can absolutely contact the county office and we can walk you through what that looks like. But what it's really as simple as is basically petitioning to be able to have that permit program. We have the data to demonstrate the occupancy, but being able to establish what those rules are is really important too, because, and I do talk about this in a number of communities, is that when you especially talk about the peak impacts during the day, it's something that can definitely serve the neighborhood for sure. It really comes down to some other communities, especially throughout California, where the overnight parking restrictions tend to have an effect on your ability to entertain or have guests over, etc. But given that this is likely a daytime impact, it would be something that is likely a pretty simple fix. But I would just say that for those neighbors who are interested in it, to be able to reach out and find out a little bit more about those instructions as well. And then we can help walk them through that. Great. And I think there was another comment. Jennifer, could you mind to walk me through it? Because I'm monitoring also the hand raises.
Yeah, the following comment was from, or question was from Scott. He asked, what about the housing contingent that wanted people who live in vans, et cetera, to utilize the various lots long term?
Kevin, do you want to speak to the issue of the housing contingent?
Yeah, so I know housing is a huge priority for everybody in the basin, right? But I have not, and I have not been involved as long as others have been. So there may have been some other discussions, but in my involvement, I have not heard that request, and we've actually been working on trying to make sure people are not doing that, not living in their vans or in their vehicles in these parking lots long term. So that is something that we're trying to avoid. if there is something I need to be aware of that we need to try to think about, that's definitely something that I'm interested in understanding. But at this point in time, that is something we're trying to avoid allowing.
Great. And Adam, I see your hand again, so if you wouldn't mind to go ahead and unmute yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, just one follow-up question. So you mentioned based on kind of the parking data that we have so far, that it would be residential parking potentially, you could set the hours. Residential parking permit required 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Like we could set that as a community. Is that correct?
So what I'd like to describe it is it's based on the need. Is what when we talk about a residential parking permit program, what you like to do is look at what the impact is and when the impact is occurring, because it really does come down to mitigating the curb space. And anticipating this request, what I would suggest is it would likely be a daytime regulation that would be time limited, permit exempt. And what it comes down to then is the number of permits eligible per household. So that's where some of the granularity comes into play on how that basically plays out. But utilizing these neighborhoods and just the little bit of, exposure that we've had and some of the feedback from the neighbors is that I would anticipate that it would be kind of core daytime hours. And that when you launch a program like this, what you tend to do is you introduce a neighborhood time limit so that you have the flexibility also if you have guests, but also for that spillover factor. If I'm going to run in and grab some pizza, I can park, but I can't park for more than 2 hours per se. But if I have a permit, the time limit doesn't apply to me, with the exception of the 72-hour violation and any other posted regulations. It could also be seasonal, so that the kind of similar to some of our snow removal signs, it could be exactly the opposite here, like a April 1 or May 30 through October 30 or something like that as well. So I think it's important to recognize that anytime you introduce a residential parking permit program, you want to be able to address the impact, but also minimize the inconvenience to the residents that are already obviously being inconvenienced by the spillover parking. But you try to really kind of find that sweet spot to address that demand and that need so that they obviously have that parking resource available to them in their neighborhoods.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then Jennifer, do you have the information on the petition process of what we wrote into the code?
I can pull it up right now and take a look at it, but I do see Dan's question, if that's what you're referring to, about the number of people that need to sign the petition.
Yep, we'll have Jennifer take a look at the code just to be very specific so that we want to give you the correct answer on that. Does anyone else have a question or a bit of feedback? If anybody else wants to raise their hand or any other comments in the chat. While Jennifer is picking up that other bit of information. Any other comments, thoughts, ideas? And again, if you are interested in the potential, you have a property location for a shared parking agreement and you'd like to have a conversation with us, please don't hesitate to put your contact information in the chat, or don't hesitate to email us at pc@dixonresourcesunlimited.com, or you can contact any one of our county staff here as well. And I know I'm putting the pressure on Jennifer as she checks the code. And I see her looking at it. Any response, Jennifer?
I'm reading the red line version, which means I'm looking at strike-throughs and underlines. So give me another moment.
No worries. We'll definitely validate that. But Kevin, how about while Jennifer's checking that fun fact, was there anything else in wrap up that you wanted to offer? Oh, wait, Jennifer has the answer. Yes, Jennifer.
It would be 50, it's a majority, so it's 51% or greater of dwelling units is required to sign the petition or to initiate the process for the consideration for designating a residential permit parking zone. So the 51% of your area, if you're talking about interest in a RPP zone, residential permit parking zone, you would need 51% or more. And then there's a lot more details about what would actually qualify. For example, only one vote for dwelling unit, So it's a great excuse to be reading the ordinance. It explains the rules on petitioning here, how that petition would be evaluated. And for example, it would have to meet a certain occupancy rate based off of the occupancy data collection that is being done. And that means that it would need to have a parking occupancy of 70% or higher during the times that you're indicating are an issue for parking demand in your area. So
And we'll
recommend
make
you.
sure that the code is linked on the web page as well, so that anybody for ease of access can see this. And looking at a couple more of the questions, do you currently have any private properties that are participating? Not yet. We came really close last year, so fingers crossed, and we continue to pursue those relationships. Can we get access to the slide presentation for review? The recording will definitely be on the website, and we'll ask the county to also post the actual PowerPoint itself as well as a standalone. So you'll have access to both of those links. Thank you for the update. And can we please publicly post this process or provide us the link of where you can find that? And Patricia, I'm assuming that you're thinking about the residential parking permit program. So we will be sure that the municipal code, the county code is posted on the website, as well as the Engage Placer location. And with that, I'm going to take one more moment and see if anybody has a hand raised. Any other comments? Not seeing any. Before I hand the mic back over to Kevin, I just really want to thank all of you. We know this affects where you live and where you work, and we really appreciate your patience and the opportunity to be able to work with you all to help resolve and find solution together. And please do provide your feedback throughout the summer. Come to the future meetings, obviously, but please do drop notes out there. If you guys see something, say something. If you observe an improvement, that would help. This is really the time as we start to build this program gradually to be able to adapt and modify is a big part of this. So with that, thank you. And Kevin, I will hand the mic back over to you.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything really else to add. Just again, thank you for participating, and again, in the future, we'll try to post the notices and get information out earlier in advance, and try to help give more people the opportunity to participate. But nobody has to wait until that next meeting if there is feedback, as Julie said. You know, the more information we get of how things are working or not working, the earlier the better. And so. Please do, as there are issues or things that are not working well, or ideas, you know, please let us know. And we're all, well, I mean, Dixon has a lot of experience, but the rest of us, we're all kind of learning as we go and trying to figure out how to implement this in a way that works for everybody. And I mentioned this earlier, and Julie did too, that we recognize it impacts everybody. It's the residents, it's the businesses, it's the visitors too. And so we recognize that it's whatever we do here has some amount of impact on everybody that lives in the area. And so we want to be able to work with you and work with the community to find something that works well for everybody.
Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
We hope to see everyone at the next meeting in July. The date will be posted as soon as we confirm it.